Medical disclaimer. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and does not serve as medical advice. Kate and John are not medical professionals. This podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or prevent any illness. Always consult your physician before making lifestyle changes. Welcome back to the Illuminated Path. This is episode 16. What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about what a passionpreneur is, as well as really finding your why in terms of when you're setting goals and going after things that you're passionate about. So we've been talking all about goal setting. If you haven't checked out our free workbook, the Goal Alignment and Time Allocation Workbook, go to newmoonholisticlife.com/goals. It's completely free. So we're kind of continuing that conversation and really talking about like what is your reasoning behind what you want to do and accomplish in your life.
Yeah, I think the workbook and kind of the discussion today is really continuing that conversation of designing your life and getting intentional with your identity.
Yeah.
So, how's the week?
The week is good. I've been sick for the past week, so I probably still sound a little congested. So hopefully that'll go away for the next episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been kind of sick for a week, just like a cold, and it really throws you off. It's been tough not going to the gym and
Yeah.
just being really off in terms of my sleep. So my Aura Ring tells me, like, how well I sleep and everything at night, and for the first, like, 4 nights when I really was pretty sick, like, it was like, "Oh, your readiness is at, like, a 30 out of 100," which is very low.
Yeah, I really like that the Aura Ring gives you that readiness score. I think that's really cool because it kind of tells you like, hey, you got to go easier today.
Yeah, so, but doing better. We were supposed to go to my brother and sister-in-law's gingerbread house making party, which is an annual party that we
I
always go
know.
to, and I didn't wanna worry about getting anyone sick, so we did make our gingerbread house at home, which was fun because we literally bought it, like, last month because we were excited about it. It was a tree house.
I had some dyes. I had some artificial dyes for sure. I was
Yeah, but
sitting
we
there
did
like
good.
sipping on the frosting.
Frosting was not dyed.
The green one was,
It was,
and
yeah,
all the little bits of
candies.
candy. It was funny because I didn't eat, like, I left all the red colored things because red 40 is like the worst dye.
Yeah,
And then at the end, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have a few.
yeah.
But
We
yeah,
did good, though. We each had, like, a piece of the roof and, like a bush or whatever,
yeah,
and then we were like, "Okay, it's going in the garbage because 'cause we're not gonna
yeah,
be picking at it, we're not gonna eat the whole thing,"
yeah,
and hey, that's balance, right?
yeah. I mean, like, we do that every year. We do a gingerbread house, but we don't actually eat the gingerbread house. Like, will have a couple pieces, we'll decorate it. This year it was cool. We had a tree house, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, but how about you?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm going through it, like, with trauma work and I kind of said to the energy healer that we worked with, a lot of things that were coming up in my life came up during that session, and they've continued to come up and continued to be things that I've worked on kind of getting through and uncovering since then. Um, so yeah, I mean, a lot's just coming up for me in terms of my childhood and the years and years I was on medications and things, memories that were suppressed and things like that. So, and then we started reading a book, the How to Be the Love You Seek.
Yeah, it's a new book by Dr. Nicole Lapira. She's very well known on, like, Instagram. She's called herself the holistic psychologist, so she's wonderful.
Yeah, so we started reading that, and I mean, that's definitely doing more trauma work too, and it's allowed us to work on our own traumas, work through those traumas, and at the same time, at the end of the chapter, there's like a checklist and questions to answer, kind of its own workbook.
Mhm.
And we've been able to do that together. And I think that's been really meaningful in terms of, also understanding each other and each other's traumas. And yeah, I think that's been a really good experience.
Yeah, I'm really excited we just got started, so but we've never, like, read a book together, and It's really cool, like, we just kinda, like, read the chapters on our own, on our Kindles, and then came together when it was time to, like, discuss, and then it's like we're able to like you said, we're understanding each other's past better and understanding, like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense as to why something like that would be a trigger or why that upsets you in that way." So, um, yeah, highly recommend, honestly, any of her work. I have not read any of her other books, but that book in particular, I'm really excited to keep going getting into.
Yeah. I've been reading like a madman.
A madman.
A madman. Love it.
Yeah, we love reading.
Well, I've had a turbulent relationship with reading because I've always known it was something I really not not to use the word should, but when you look at again, ultra wealthy, ultra healthy people, that is like one of the biggest habits that comes up. And it's not just about like having the habit because reading can do so many different things, but you're giving yourself the opportunity to constantly be absorbing knowledge or immerse yourself in another world or learn about someone's life. Like there's so many different things it can do. Um, and for most of my life, I was like, oh, I hate reading. I hate books. It's so boring. And it's been a years long process, but I'm at a point now where it's a very important part of my day.
Well, you bought us our Kindles last year, right?
Yeah.
So we've had them for about a year.
Yeah.
And when we first got them, you would not put it down. You were
Yep.
reading so much at the beginning of the year last year.
I
And then,
read a
like,
book on speed reading
yeah.
to just like inhale books, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I'm at a point where I'm kind of like finding my own stride and balance with it. All right. That's a lot of chatter. Um, so if you haven't already, definitely check out the goals workbook. There's a link in there for the Facebook community. And so we're going to kind of still be continuing this conversation of aligning yourself, aligning your identity with your goals, allocating your time, but also kind of the background stuff that goes with that. So the first kind of, I guess, discussion there is passionpreneur and what that actually means, who that is, who that applies to. So do you want to start there?
Yeah. So a passionpreneur, it's a new term that I just learned about, but it's really when you are starting and building, whether that's like a business or a side business, really based around your passion and something that you absolutely love. Whereas, like, and it has the preneur in it, right? So, like, it ties in with entrepreneur, but for some reason, it kind of it's a newer term, I guess, and it really gets you to think about it in a different way than just entrepreneur, which a lot of people, and this isn't necessarily accurate, but a lot of people see as an entrepreneur as someone who's just starting a business solely for like the profit
Mm.
and solely for making money. Like, we absolutely see ourselves as entrepreneurs, but we also see ourselves as passionpreneurs because our businesses are based off of our passions.
Yeah, it makes me think of our new accountant because she said to us, she said, she's a new business owner. She worked in firms for many years. And she said to us, so some context here. Kate and I have been through quite a few accountants. We have several businesses, and it poses its own set of challenges. You need someone who specializes in small business. You need someone who understands our structure. And it's been about 4 years, and we had issues in our books that we just could not get someone to help us with. Our new accountant, got it resolved, and she immediately says, "You, it's just a half hour your time, a half hour of mine." I said to her, I said, "No, we're going to pay you the full hour."
Mm,
She goes, "Well, I try to focus on helping people first and getting the money after."
yeah.
And I think that really speaks to like someone who does what they do because they enjoy it, because they appreciate the connections that they get to make, the impact they get to have in people's lives. So we insisted we pay her for the full hour, but it was it was one of those moments of knowing we found the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that makes me think of like, we started this podcast to help people, to share our knowledge, to educate. And, yeah, the goal is to make money from the podcast. And I know that there's tons of podcasts that have ads, and we don't currently do that. Like, we just promote ourselves and what we have to offer. But we really did it because of it's what we're passionate about. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like we, there's a whole discussion there about entrepreneurs and their relationship with money and asking for money, and um, like obviously we are marketing ourselves, but at the
right.
same time, we're doing it in a way that feels good for us, that is providing as much value as possible in the process. So to kind of loop this back to passionpreneurs, these are people who are doing they're chasing their passion, but they're doing it in a way that allows them to live off of it,
Mhm.
you know? Um, and I think that's a really powerful way to live, because when we really start to talk about designing your life, and I'll kind of get into the culturally, right? Like we as a culture have this idea of like you can't enjoy your life. That's not how life works. And I wanna grab what I wrote in our document here, because it really felt well articulated.
Okay.
Um, Society portrays it as naivety if you don't agree with their ignorance. But in reality, misery loves company.
Mm.
So it's like you're naive if you think you can go and live your life and chase your passion when everyone else believes that's not the way the world works. You gotta sell all your time. Get rid of all of it.
You gotta be miserable. It's the only way to make money.
Yeah.
Miserable and stressed.
Yeah. Um, so in terms of chasing your passions then, and we talk about passionpreneur as someone who is living in their why, right? So the first conversation there is stress versus passion. So there's a great quote that we both love, and this always comes up. This is Simon Sinek. He says, "Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion." And
I love
it's,
that so much.
yeah,
It really spoke to me. I remember hearing that while I still worked at my old job at the marketing agency, and I was like, I am definitely not passionate about this. So, all of the stress that I was literally living in and feeling on a day to day basis,
yeah,
it felt terrible. There was no passion behind it. There was no like, I'm going to feel good about, making this client happy or launching this website. Like, it just didn't matter. Like it wasn't I wasn't doing anything purposeful in my mind. And so that was a huge part of like why I wanted to change everything and work for myself and go through the holistic life coaching certification because I was like, this can't be the way of life. Is just every single day, the actual like majority of my time going towards something that I feel nothing for.
yeah,
Like, we're meant to feel, we're meant to, like, have that expression of our emotions
yeah.
on a daily basis, and, yes, like, stress is gonna be there when you're working on something that you are passionate about as well, but it's like it's a totally different type of stress.
It's like that fulfilling challenge,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
definitely more about, like, the challenge and
right? Like you're uncovering pieces of the journey, and you are getting to, take a step back with that perspective of what am I learning here? And how does this help the larger picture versus just I'm on a time crunch for this client. And, maybe this is a little harsh, but I really do believe this. You can either build your dream or someone else's.
yeah, that's one I've heard a lot too. I mean, if you're an employee, that's kind of what you are doing, like, you're working for someone else.
So, kind of in the same discussion, then, is like when you're stressed, it feels like it doesn't end. There's always a new marker, a new kind of point you got to get to. When you're passionate, you can just get lost in it. And it kind of goes back to that discussion of loving the journey and not having a real destination.
Yeah, and like I was saying, like the emotional component to it, like yeah, there's times where I've cried over things, that we've struggled with in our business, but it's like I'm crying because it means so much and
Mm,
because it is so important to me, and I'm feeling a little stressed and overwhelmed, and so the emotions are coming out, and that's a good thing, honestly. Versus, like, I remember I cried at my desk at work before because I was so frustrated that no one was listening to me and
but
that I was just continuing to have things piled on, and it's like I felt so stuck.
right, it's like how much you're kind of crying in the sense of like how much you care for your business versus crying because of how powerless you feel.
Very much. Yeah.
Yeah. So my last point there is really just, in terms of finding your why, like, and loving the journey. So Russ is a rapper who I'm a big fan of. And he talks about like just detaching from the results. Like forget the destination that you've set in your mind. What's going to feel good to live and experience? And I think that's a really important perspective.
Yeah, you have to be enjoying every step of growing something, every step of building something, looking back on it and remembering, like, we look back all the time, like our first podcast episode, that was such an exciting time. And back in March of this year, when we started brainstorming at
Oh
like
my God.
eight
Yeah.
o'clock at night, one night we were like, we need to figure
We got to
something
get
out.
out. Yeah. We had like
Impromptu brainstorm
oh my God.
session, and we were all fired up though.
We had this little moon lamp and we sat at the kitchen table.
Yeah, I have the picture
It was
still.
like 8, 9 o'clock, and we're like, "Well, we can't do this anymore. Like, we need to plan our escape."
Hmm.
And we did it.
Yeah. And so it's cool to like be able to look back on stuff like that. And that's again when I just feel like, like, yeah, there were times of stress, but there was just like so much more behind that stress. Like the passion outweighs that,
Yeah.
and the fulfillment that you're getting from the hard work and dedication that you're putting into it.
Yeah, you got to kind of balance, the passion and the excitement with the unknowns because I think people let the unknowns um kind of overweigh the excitement of what they truly want to do.
Yeah.
So, to kind of get back into then designing your life, right? We talked about culturally, like people, misery loves company, and we have this idea as a culture of that's not the way the world works. I saw actually, I think it was the holistic psychologist today who said, this attitude of it's all downhill after your 20s. Like
Oh yeah, I shared it on my story.
if that's your attitude, really think about what you are manifesting for the rest of your life. My life since I was 18, 18 to 21 was all downhill. Everything after has been about me building and falling in love with life again. And where I'm at now gets me so fired up for what my 30s and 40s and 50s are going to look like.
Yeah, I kinda see my life, it's weird, I almost, like, see, like, a line in my life from when I just, like, changed everything, and when
Mm,
I saw my holistic life coach, I adopted a holistic lifestyle, and I just really started to understand myself, understood why I felt anxious, that it wasn't something wrong with me, that I was just dysregulated in my nervous system, and
yeah.
I have, like, this line where I'm like, "Oh, that's, like, before me and now me."
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's just like, frankly, people give up. Like, you get into your 20s and you have no time because you're just working constantly. And then it's, well, this is life. And if for me to want anything else, everybody's going to make fun of me and say that's not the way the world works and you're naive. And, you know, it's, but then it's also like this conversation of people saying, like, you got lucky or you had help. That one particularly came up when I was studying wealthy people because everyone's like, "Ah, they had help, family fortune." It's actually not true. Most millionaires make their own fortune. There are, like, generational generationally wealthy families,
Yeah.
and that gets into, like, trusts and things, but people don't get lucky. People work their ass off. Um, so the questions to ask, right? Like, if you're designing your life, what would your life look like if you actually did what you wanted to do, right? So, and again, we've talked about this, like, set judgment aside, set the expectations of other people aside. What do you want your life to look like?
Yeah, set aside the fear of, like, "How do I make money doing this?"
Right.
Because there is, quite frankly, always a way.
I always think about years and years ago, there was a kid on YouTube making like millions reviewing toys.
Really wish I started on YouTube as a
I
child.
know, right? But like, point being, you can make money doing anything. There's a a page that I occasionally see of a guy who makes these like beautiful terrariums. He's got millions of followers, and that's what he does. Like, it's a larger discussion of consistency and actually getting yourself to that point rather than can I make money doing this? Because you can make money doing anything, especially in the digital age when people are paying for eyeballs and ears.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of goes then to like, if you were to build your life around your passions, what would you actually enjoy? And why aren't you allowed to enjoy your life? So to kind of tie this into our workbook, right? When I was at rock bottom, just got out of the hospital, and I decided I want to train MMA, that felt good to me. Like I wanted to design my life around that. And it became, okay, what do I have to do to accomplish that? And you reverse engineer it and go and figure out like what are the habits? What are the things that have to happen? I started training. I started going to a studio. I started lifting weights and getting back into exercise and supporting that goal. And I I believe I was successful in that goal and having the lifestyle of a mixed martial artist, and it felt good and that changed, but I built my life around what I was passionate about. I got a taste of it and I loved it, and I continued to build around that.
Yeah.
And now we're doing the same with the podcast and, holistic life coaching and really being able to share this kind of approach to life.
Yeah, and it's the ability to, like, pivot and change your mind and switch, and it's hard because you go to college and you get a degree in something, and then you think, like, "This is what I'm supposed to be working in, this is what my job should be in," and a lot of people don't end up even working in their major, but
Yep.
you're making that decision when you're so young, like, you haven't even figured out who you are yet. It's unfortunate that, you're spending a ton of money on your degree and, like, that's the choice you made and then you're working in it, but if you decide you don't like it, I've heard people say like, "Oh, well, I'm already 30, like, I'm not gonna go back to school, or I'm not gonna, like, go doing this and that," and it's like, you've only been working out of college for less than 10 years, like, you have if you're working till you're 65, that's, like, 35 years if you're 30 years old.
Yeah.
That is far more time than the time that has already passed, so it's like, you're allowed to change your mind, you're allowed to go after something different because your passions have changed.
Yeah. It makes me think a lot about, as a kid, even into high school, I really wanted to um be a lawyer. And then I thought about being a cop. I thought about being a doctor. And when I realized it wasn't, because like I see those as noble professions. I think people who do those jobs have the best of intent, but it was about time. Like I looked at the amount of time involved, and I was not willing to trade that much of my life. And that kind of led me into, marketing and business. But it's funny you say that because I was just reading in the psychology of money. And he mentions someone he knew, someone he grew up with, really wanted to be a doctor, and he wasn't as well off, and it took him many, many more years to become a doctor. And it was like, I don't know, he was 45 and he finally became a doctor. He hated it, and he spent his whole life, built his whole life around it. And the guy saw him again. He said, "Hey, how you doing? I know you became a doctor." He said, "Terrible career,
Oh, no.
terrible career." And the hours were, I mean, like, we also frankly need to, like, as a country, consider that, like, these people are saving lives and they're running on no sleep.
Not
um
exactly safe.
no, but the sleep and the lack of a schedule and balance and everything was too much for him, and he hated it. But he pivoted and he went into, like, finance or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he ended up being very successful in what he did. And I think that's a remarkable story of, like, being willing to pivot and do something different, because again, like, it's empowering yourself to design what you want to experience.
Right.
So, in terms of actually finding your passion, finding your why, there's some questions that Kate's going to share that you can ask yourself. For me personally, I want to mention you need to try things.
Yeah.
Like, when I was trying to figure out MMA and designing my life and all of that, like, I had to try things. And that's, you know, when I was heavily involved in, like, mental health and blogging about that and all that, a big point that I always made was, like, people just take the pills and don't try a grounding technique. And there are so many different techniques that you can use and things to try to manage your health,
Mhm.
So always try things, always seek out new experiences and figure out what works for you. Like with the energy healer, it was a little different, but it ended up being such a powerful experience for me. I'm really excited to work with her more,
Yeah.
and have that as a part of my life. So always try things.
Yeah. I am going to grab my phone if you're watching on YouTube because I have questions written down. So these are things that I have used with my clients in the past and asked them to really consider and think about when they're really trying to figure out what they're passionate about, what they want to do, if they want to make a career change, if they want to become a passionpreneur or an entrepreneur, if they want to have a side gig or whatever it is, or if it's just about building a new hobby and having like time that you enjoy yourself and can use your imagination and have that enjoyment. I mean, that's
Yeah.
important. So, where in your life do you feel like you don't flow? That's kind of about like the opposite of finding your passion, but and like finding your why, but like what feels like you're having some, restriction in
Yeah, I mean, I think it's starting to understand your resistance.
and
Like,
understanding like things that you maybe don't feel passionate about and
right.
don't feel like you're really in alignment with.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was in the office, like working corporate, I was like, they wanted me to go full time. And I was like, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to work for me, dog.
It didn't feel good to me either, but I made the decision out of fear that this is
Yep.
what I needed to do. Um, Next question, where do you feel like you are lacking gratitude in your life? And is it something that you can either shift in your mind or is it something that you need to make a change?
That makes me think of family, because I feel like we get so ingrained in our routines and the things that have to get done. And, like personally for us, like, not to say I take you for granted, but there's times like we're so caught up in the routine of everything that we have to do
Mhm.
that what I find myself is not taking enough time for gratitude for you and for the dogs. Like being able to sit with them and just pet them sometimes and make sure that they get attention.
Yeah. Well, I feel like those are more mind shifts, right?
Yeah.
Um, So now more like questions about really finding like your passion and finding something that really feels good to you. What energizes you?
That's the big one because like when we talk with entrepreneurs or business owners, it's just like you see the way they light up. Like
Right.
we're going to help people doing that and it can be anything. Like we've known IT guys that got fired up about giving people managed services. Like it doesn't matter as long as it energizes you and it's something that feels good that you enjoy doing, do it. And that's the thing too. It might not be what energizes you forever, but for right now, what do you want to build your life around?
Yeah. It really like you can definitely tell like this is either draining my energy or giving me energy, giving me like making me feel inspired, making me just excited to be doing whatever that is.
Yeah.
What could you research for hours without getting bored? Like, what is something that you just love to continue to learn about?
Yeah. And
Because can you educate other people about it?
that's what I was going to say is like going along with that. What do you enjoy teaching others about?
Yeah, there's a lot that you could do there. And you said it recently, like, you only need to know, like, what, 10% more than, like, your prospective student?
Yeah, that was Jamie C. She said it was a belief that helped her reach $1 million coaching business was that I only need to be 10% ahead of my dream client in order to continue to educate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And with today, like, there is so many ways to educate yourself. There's so many ways to take courses online, to be just filling yourself with knowledge through books. I mean, whatever the topic is,
Yeah, I mean, even think about like the knowledge of the world is at your fingertips. What do you use that for?
right?
Like the amount of things I've learned on YouTube, most of my music journey was YouTube, was learning tutorials, learning how to add this plugin, how to add that effect, and I taught myself guitar from YouTube. Like there's so many things you can do and so many resources. I guarantee if there's something you want to learn, you can go on YouTube, type in how to blank, and you will learn how to do it.
Yeah,
But again, it's about commitment, it's about integrating it, it's about having that consistency in it.
yeah. What is the greatest challenge that you've overcome and how did you overcome it? So often it's really said like your best student, your best client is a younger version of you.
Mm,
I think that's absolutely accurate for me going to holistic life coach and really changing my entire life and then going through the certification and now I'm like I want to help younger versions of me so that they're not suffering, so that they're not going through what I was going through and they can really take the same steps and actions that I did to change everything.
yeah, yeah.
So even if it's not necessarily teaching or having clients, like what have you overcome and how can you do something with that to bring that into the world, to teach someone to, have a hobby around it, a side gig, a business?
Yeah.
What is a world problem you'd love to solve?
So this one really makes me think about the soul of money
Oh, yeah.
because she said, and I thought this was really profound. She said, world hunger is not a resource problem, it's a distribution problem. So her goal was to set out to solve world hunger. And she had to understand that it was not an issue of resources. I think homelessness is a similar discussion. We have homes, we don't have people who can afford them.
Yeah.
And her point was logistics are the issue. Like we have the resources to feed people, but what we don't have is the money always in one place to allocate those resources to people. So I think it was a very noble pursuit of her, but she also had to carry that understanding into it of like, we want to solve this world problem, but there's some serious misconceptions about it.
Yeah. And lastly, if you could do anything in the world for a job or a career with zero concerns for money, what would it be?
And that's the fear, because a lot of people are going to go, "Hmm, I would love to, I don't know, golf all
Mm,
day every day."
mm.
And then we go, "But how do I make money doing that?"
Well, I can guarantee you someone else has found a way.
You
Even if
can
they're not a professional golfer, like there are ways.
you can film it, you can do sponsorships, you can post social media clips of it, you can start a podcast and talk about it. There are literally infinite things that you can do to monetize whatever you want to do. But again, it's education, it's understanding. You're going to have a discovery process here of like, what does the execution actually look like?
Yeah.
So, a final point to say, eliminate fears from this discovery process. Like, that's not to say they're not going to come up, but don't make decisions with them.
Yeah. I mean, I even think of people being like, "Oh, well, I want to make money just laying on the beach." Guess what? People are doing that too. They are
Yep,
travel bloggers
you can
and
do it.
they are social media famous and they are making money traveling and sharing their experiences.
Yeah,
So, like, if someone else can do it, you can too. The biggest difference is that they believed that they could and they started working towards it and they made it happen.
yeah. And that goes into manifestation and belief in the power of your thoughts. But um, I think a lot of it too comes from this misconception of the way social media works, because people think like you go viral and then it's great. And like that's just not how it works. And especially for us, from like seeing that side of business, right? You have a strategy, you have consistency. But anyone who tells you they know what needs to happen for you to go viral is just lying. Like, nobody knows that. And the thing is, in the marketing industry, everybody loves to claim they're an expert, and then they do things that you scratch your head at. But you don't just go viral. It and I think there was research on like algorithmically what happens. It's usually about 1,000 posts before you'll hit something that's like 1 million views or over. And another major misconception is that you need hundreds of thousands of followers to make money,
Mm,
which I know Jamie C and a lot of coaches talk about. Is there's people with 3,000 followers making a living.
yeah.
Like, the reality is, it is about your engagement, and it is about how captivating your content is. Do people actually want to engage with it? So I would argue like travel bloggers, vloggers, they tend to have more beautiful scenery. A lot of them do show more skin,
Mhm.
and that gets more clicks and views, and the algorithm loves it. But it's kind of just figuring out like, how do you execute on it, and manage your expectations, because the idea of an overnight success will take years to accomplish. There's a famous quote from, I think, Messi, a soccer player, who says, "It took me so many years, so many days, so many hours, and this many seconds to become an overnight success."
Mm.
Like, there's a lot of background work before you get there. So, a long-winded way of saying, you don't need a million followers. You're probably not going to go viral, at least not at the start. And if you do, good for you, great. Um, Statistically, it happens more with newer platforms while the algorithm calibrates. So, like TikTok, so many people went viral. Um, and also, you know, you're going to be learning throughout that whole process.
And that's if you decide like social media is the way to go. A lot
Right.
of people don't want to do that, but my point in saying all of that was to say there are ways.
Yeah,
There are
absolutely.
options, there are ways to make things happen. But it's about really knowing that that's like something you're truly passionate about because like we said, like that is the why behind it. And it's having a why of like because I absolutely love it, because it lights me up, because it fires me up is going to allow you to take it all further.
Yeah. when I met with Kat, the energy healer, she said to me, "What do you feel when you're making music?" She's like, "What? How would you describe that?" And I didn't. I was just like, divinity. Like you get the chill on your back, and like it feels meaningful. Like when I'm sitting there trying tons of different lyrics, and then I hit the sweet spot, and I know like those are the lyrics. That that moment feels so meaningful that I want that in my life. I want to build my life around that.
Yeah.
So, some questions then for you to start asking yourself again, eliminate fear from the discovery process here. Like, really take the time, ask yourself these questions, figure out what do you want to build your life around. And again, this is why the workbook is so helpful because part of that is if you are building your life around something else and you need to make a pivot in your life or your lifestyle, the workbook will help you actually audit and allocate your time to make sure that happens. So we were talking about social media, for example. You can use the workbook to figure out where am I going to have time to record content or, something like that if social media is your route. Um, but generally, most businesses in today's world, social media is going to play a role.
Yeah. And we've talked all about, your passion in terms of like work and finding your why and building a business. And I know that was the bulk of this conversation, but I also want to just bring it back to like the goal setting and the workbook. And, if your goal is to be healthier, what is your why behind that? Like,
Mm,
really think about that. It's because you want to create a better life for yourself, because you want to feel better in your own skin. Like,
you want to be able to play with your kids or, be there for your family. Like there's a lot of ways this could go, not just business. I think I personally tend to default to business, um, which is good and bad because I walk a fine line of like personal life and business. But um, yeah, I mean, you can apply this to anything. Even me with MMA, there was that with music, which I had to learn for years before I launched our label
mhm,
and released music under that. So it's really like, what do you want to do? And stop, not even stop, just like let society out of your head. Get rid of the noise of like, ah, you can't do this. You, you're not realistic, and like misery truly loves company.
mhm,
Don't build your life with those people.
yeah.
Anything else?
No, just check out the workbook. Again, newmoonholisticlife.com/goals. We'll send it over. It's completely free. And as I mentioned, I've been sick, but so we haven't been able to like do all of the filling it out ourselves like we wanted to and sharing it in our Facebook group. So now that I'm doing a lot better, we're gonna fill that out ourselves. You can literally type it right into the document. Every single box that is white on the, workbook is typable. You
Yeah.
can do it right on your phone, you can do it on your computer, and we were also gonna create, like, a printable version for those who do want to print it because it's a very colorful workbook, and I know that you probably don't wanna print it in color or even try to, like, make it black and white, so
The
we'll do that
best
as well.
best practice marketer in us. Well, really, that was you that made it, but well, we both made it, but you did all the fields.
Yeah.
So we had to make sure that it was mobile friendly. So
Mhm.
you can literally just save it as a file on your phone and you always have it. And you can kind of just take, 10 minutes even, I think is enough each day to start to fill out the next piece. So it's really helpful. It'll really give you some perspective on designing your life and incorporating your habits. Like Kate said, we're going to get in there and start sharing our own how we're filling it out. For me, I'm planning to have a big year with music, so I'm really excited to like map all that out.
Good.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
me either. Friendly reminder: this podcast is sponsored by New Moon Apparel. That is our Zen motivation and moon themed clothing line. You can shop designs at newmoonapparel.com. You can get the workbook at newmoonholisticlife.com/goals, and you can join our balanced wellness community through that workbook. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.